And here we
Hey
are.
guys.
Hi.
Hi. How are you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Good, good. So you're in Denver right now, right?
We are. Yeah. Our dog's really confused. She's like, wait, who's this voice? So Squirrely's coming in to say hi. I don't know if you can see her.
Probably not.
I would love to see her.
You just saw
I saw a snout, but
Weird.
well, if we're lucky, my cats will pop in and jump on the bookshelves behind me. And so you
Awesome.
might get to see some nice black cats.
We've tried to train her to do that, but she's not really an athlete. She's more of an indoor dog. So, yeah.
Yeah, so we're in Denver, but we met in Chicago, and Heather lived in
Yeah.
Chicago for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I often see the Flatlands Press people around.
Yeah.
That's our friend Eric
Yeah.
/ Manny. He kind of goes by either. Eric's not his birth certificate, but he goes by Manny. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I think I might have talked to him very recently. So Zine Mercado,
Yeah.
you're familiar with? Yeah, they had kind of a social distance safe version
Yep.
recently, and I think he was there representing stuff.
Yeah. Yep, totally. He was there. He's involved in organizing that with Oscar Ariola and Chima Skandal.
Yeah.
So
Well,
should
cool.
we, I guess the first question is, do we want to do like 15 minutes, and then
Sure.
or alternate? Okay. And then, should we like rock, scissors, papers for who goes first, or like?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, unless you guys are like, no, I really want to go first, or no. I mean, I don't have any
Are
preference.
you like
either way.
a 1, 2, 3, then show your hand?
Yes. Except there's a lag. So, okay, 1, 2, 3, and then show your hands, but like cover your eyes and then open your eyes.
Yeah.
There you
Okay.
go.
Smart. All right. Do you want
All
to
right.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Ready?
Yep.
1, 2, 3.
Shoot.
Okay,
Oh.
I'm opening my eyes.
Oh.
Oh, we both got scissors.
What are a bunch of zinesters gonna pick when they rotate?
I know. I mean, they're never going to pick rock. They might pick paper, but
Yes.
definitely scissors.
Definitely scissors.
Try it one more time. Ready?
Okay.
Okay. All right. Ready?
Paper, scissors, shoot.
Oh.
Oh.
Rock.
So what does this mean? So I won rock, paper, scissors, but that doesn't answer the question.
I think.
Does that mean I go first? I ask you questions first?
Sure. Let's
Let's
let
do
that
that.
mean that.
I do like the idea of this being like a meta thing where it's really just us playing rock, paper, scissors for half an hour.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what the people want. That's what they want to see.
Excellent. Okay, so then let's do this. Hello, my name is Liz. I live in Chicago. I do Caboose Zine, among other things. I also am the manager at Quimby's Bookstore, and we sell zines. And we sell a bunch of your press's zines. And your press, do you pronounce it isPRESS or isPRESS?
Well, I mean, it is an acronym, right?
Mhm.
So it stands for Institute of Sociometry. So usually I say isPRESS until someone looks at me askance, and then I say isPRESS, and then they're like, oh, just how it sounds. So it's like both things, right?
Yes.
So the great thing about the acronym, it stands for Institute of Sociometry, which is like a long-running kind of culture jamming collective, and we're the official press of the Institute.
Mhm.
But is like the verb to be, and so that has a lot to do with the work we do also. So it kind of works either way. So that's your non-answer.
No, that was very good, because that actually was going to be my first thing, is like, just give us like a couple sentences overview of your, so that was exactly perfect. You read my mind. My next question for you is sociometry a real word? Did you make that up?
It's a great question. Do you want to take this one?
Yeah, it's a real discipline. It's not really used anymore, if it ever was.
Pseudoscience, like in 1950s.
Yeah, well, it's not. I mean, it's a way. I mean, it's kind of twofold. So it started in the like the late 19th century, early 20th century. So this guy Jacob Levy-Marino coined the term, and it's applying like metrics, like a numeric, to someone's ability to socialize with groups. And And then in the 1950s and 60s, it kind of had a brief moment of popularity with there's like an offshoot of the practice called psychodrama, which is people, it's a form of therapy where you reenact through like improv and dramatization, like your traumas. But for us, it's just something I picked out of the dictionary like 25 years ago. So
Because it sounded official.
sounds official, right?
Yeah.
Well, I like that though, because I feel like that accurately reflects a lot of the kind of culture jamming-ish analysis that you do with your work.
Yeah. Definitely
And
complexity there.
Yeah.
yeah, so like, so specifically, like one of your projects that, I mean, I like all the stuff that you guys do. One that really resonates with me is the leftist leaflets in little libraries. And so what that is, if for people watching this who don't know what it is, yeah. Oh, great. Just give us like a brief overview of that.
Okay, I'll do this one, you do this one.
Sure.
Okay, so this one was issue 1, and this was kind of one of those examples, I think, that's common in our work of repeat the dumb idea until it's a good idea. And so it was like procuring, overall leftists. So it could be like punk, feminist, queer, environmental justice, racial justice zines at Zine Fest, which you're kind of like doing anyway, and amassing way too big of a collection of, right? And
were you getting these zines by buying them? Were people sending them to you? Are you giving them away free zines? These things I wonder.
Bought them all at Zine Fest, mostly. Some ordered.
Awesome.
And then just started putting them in little free libraries in a neighborhood that's kind of, our house and studio are part of this neighborhood, but right on the border. And the border is kind of more commercial industrial. And as you go further west, it becomes like really bougie, multi-million-dollar houses and lots of little free libraries. So it was just placing those zines in those little free libraries. And it kind of turned into like thoughts about speech and free speech. So the cover shot is this one. It's placing the art of menstruation in this little free, which is by Thu Tran from Colorado Springs, in this little free library. And this particular one had a bunch of Daniel Steele novels and 50 Shades of Grey in it. So it's like, whichever neighborhood tween selects those novels also needs this zine to just kind of round out their sex ed that they're getting from this little free library. Okay, so issue 2.
Right, so fun summer project doing that. Issue 2, isPRESS took like, those like plastic kind of free newspaper stands. So it's something Pete had boosted for another project, and we spray painted it down and branded it for the leftist leaflet in little libraries, and decided we were going to make a little free zine library out in front of our house. So as Pete mentioned, we live kind of on the border of this neighborhood. It's more commercial. So it's a super busy street that we live on, and we get a ton of foot traffic. So we thought this is going to be perfect. And it was interesting because we would fully stock it with zines very lovingly. And then, a few days would go by and nobody would like take anything. And then you'd wake up one morning and like every single zine would be completely gone. Or like, whoa, what happened? Like, who's taking these? And we decided not to debate it, but to actually try to observe it. And so Pete went on Amazon, as one does, and bought this $29.99 cam-high camera with unintelligible directions in Chinese, and set it up on our front porch and started monitoring the Lil. And it was sort of fascinating in that we were like, not only are we going to know who's taking these zines, but if we start paying attention, we could maybe start to see some patterns emerge in who the core zine consumer is. So kind of like a fun backstory, my day job is in kind of like communications and public relations, and doing a lot of kind of focus groups to understand how people feel about like issues, like social issues. And we thought it'd be really fun to apply that discipline to zines to develop the first ever body of market research on the zine consumer. And so what that's now turned into, Pete maybe wants to share, is another publication to be coming out TBD in 2021, chronicling a recent installation Pete and I did at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Denver,
titled Citizenship. This is Heather's design here.
Yeah.
That looks like letterpress. Was that letterpressed?
It was,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, looks great.
And so in this piece, we reveal our market research findings and the 4 core key consumers of zines. And the sort of fun thing that's going on in the museum right now is we're giving away zines in the same little free zine library outside of the museum. So folks can grab the zines there.
Oh my God. Can I tell you that overlaps a project that I am working on right now that I'm so excited that like you and I are talking right now because I did a project. Oh, this is not about me. We'll get to that later. Who cares? But I surveyed people. I'm so excited that you guys are sharing your findings. One thing I've noticed about a lot of your work, and I feel like the leftist leaflets in Little Library. So when we say Lil, that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It seems like in a lot of your work, you'll start something out as kind of pranky, kind of as this sort of like satirical, sociological angle, but then it pivots somewhere during the project. And it actually maybe becomes more of an authentic experience or more like, and it seems like that's what happened with the Lil project.
Yeah.
Or like your Coats for Teens thing where you give, the idea was to it's a zine that you guys made of photographs of teenagers putting on coats that were gifted to them because they left their house without coats as teenagers do. Yeah. And it seemed like that. And it sounds like it started out as like this joke. You were like, oh, you wacky teenagers with your perfectly good coats that you're not wearing. And then it pivoted because you met homeless teens. Mm-hmm. And it started to become about like, you know, what does it mean to become involved in helping out in your community. And then part of the zine talks about looking into volunteering for an organization. So my question to you is, because the isPRESS stuff does that so effectively, pivots on something into a realization later. I call it a so what. How that seems like something that would be very effective for many writers and artists. Do you have any advice on how to find the topic to pivot on, how to work on whatever the work is that you're doing to find that angle that makes it relevant?
Well, I think part of it, I mean, do you mind if I jump into this? So part of it is starting multiple projects because many of them don't have legs and kind of go nowhere. So coming up with an idea and repeating that idea in a durational kind of sense over time in a public space so that it's open to kind of random events. And some things, there will be instances where it has that kind of pivot, and sometimes it's external and sometimes it's internal. Sometimes you have a self-realization, like with the Coats for Teens. At some point I kind of reflected on the time that I was actually a homeless teen, and I kind of had never categorized it that way. I just thought of myself as like traveling, but I had no place to live and I didn't have any money, and it's like that was a little bit of a pivot, but also meeting teens who really wanted coats because they were street kids, and getting more invested in that. And those things were like kind of symbiotic, right? But I think the trick is, and this was actually something that was like taught to me. So when I was in college, my primary advisor and teacher is this woman, Eleanor Anton, who's a performance artist from like the 1960s. And she kind of drew me diagrams, like a circle and a line intersecting that circle. And it's like, when you repeat something out in public space and intersect it with like the randomness of everyday life, you have momentum and you're going forward and you enter this like open field that's represented by the circle. You usually have a hypothesis about what's going to happen at the end, and that gives you direction forward, but you shouldn't cling to that, because if you're only pursuing that hypothesis, you're really only manifesting your own kind of vision and your own ego, and you're not being open to like, the true nature of living, right? And the randomness of daily life. And at some point, something is going to come out of nowhere, the side of the circle, and intersect you. And that's going to bump your trajectory in a different direction. And the whole key to that way of working is being aware of those moments and not clinging to the direction you thought it was going to go, and instead following the kind of new trajectory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think like the other thing to consider too, like Pete touched on this in the beginning of the answer, is, you know, it's having a lot of ideas, or kind of like a lot of pots going on the stove too, simmering. Like I kind of call it like giving the idea some time to like cure, right? Because you originally have that idea, but you need to give it time to develop, not only in your own mind, but to like start by putting it out there and seeing how other people can intersect with it and take it off in a direction that it maybe is just meant to go.
Yeah, like how long were we driving around laughing about Coats for Teens before actually doing it?
Oh, a couple years. Yeah. Like by the time something becomes a zine, it's usually the result of one of us making kind of like the snarky joke in passing, like 6 years earlier.
Yeah. And then you start to kind of observe that, whatever phenomena that joke is about, you start to observe it, you know, and then you start to kind of get into like the finer points of what would make it funny or interesting or like more human or, you know, or more revealing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, or with the Lil stuff, you know, we're now in our kind of third iteration of it. And it's really, I think it started in like 2017. So, you know, I think being able to stick with something for a long time and like push it into different permutations, or like start it up again when it seems like it's already ended, and be like, and add a different element to it.
So what my takeaway from both of you is the two major important things are let things marinate.
Yeah.
Yep.
And be open to where the project leads you, instead of being, you know, just like, I have a thesis, I'm going to prove this thesis.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. A good metaphor I came up with a long time ago is like, when you do a project like this, it's like you're releasing something out into the world. So it's a little bit autonomous from you, right? And if you walk along the path with it long enough, it can get far enough out in front of you that you kind of lose sight of it. And then if it's a really good project, it's something that can then hide behind a tree and scare you as you walk past it. And that's when you're not necessarily playing a joke. Playing a joke on other people is like finger pointing. It's like being cynical. But if you construct a joke that then can turn on yourself and point out your own fallibilities or your own misconceptions, then it's like more meaningful. It's more funny. It's more interesting.
Yeah. I mean, something that I think is pretty like a common thread in a lot of our work and a lot of our publications is humor, right? And, you know, it's something I think the both of us are really cognizant of it's not about picking a person or something or an institution or whatever it is and just like making fun of that and putting like a lot of vitriol behind that, but it's about being open to being the butt of the joke yourself, or you know, anybody can be the butt of the joke.
Yes, and I feel like what goes along with that is, if you're going to use humor to poke fun of something, it's almost like you kind of need to be part of that culture.
Yeah.
And make your audience understand that it is done out of love and knowledge of the culture.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Especially with like, satirizing things, or putting pictures of, you know, actual people into something who are just kind of out in the world doing their thing. Like you have, I mean, you're, in a sense, you're kind of like transgressing boundaries, you know, but if you're doing it in a way that is like part of us and not like them and I, then it, I think is a little bit more acceptable.
Yeah. Some of this kind of overlaps with something else I wanted to ask you guys about, and that is that another thread that I see in a lot of your work is this investigation of what is art and what is the purpose of art. And I love that in a few different of your periodicals, you kind of posited like, this is the purpose, or this is what makes it good. And so like you were just talking about, you know, this is the quote, the true master of offensive art must be willing to put out work that offends themselves. Otherwise you are just pointing and laughing. Like you were just saying. And then somewhere else you were talking about Marshall McLuhan and, you know, art is what you can get away with. And then in Raw Fury 4, I mean, I feel like I'm like the comics geek that's like, in Superman 29. I don't mean it that way, but, you know, just that I enjoyed these moments. And then in Raw Fury 4, you talk about the purpose of art is to elicit an emotional response that engenders critical thinking and to pose questions without necessarily answering them. And it seems like, and I love this, that there's a lot of angles on this, you know, that there's maybe multiple purposes of art and multiple definitions of what art is. And I'm wondering, has there been anything that you have encountered or thought lately that have kind of inspired your current take on this? You know, while we're recording this, you know, we are in the middle of a pandemic. You know, I'm wondering, you know, has any of your recent experience kind of affected, like, what is my take on art right now? Or, you know, what, you know, your thoughts on that?
That's a big question.
Yeah, that quote from Raw Fury 4 is Heather, so I'm gonna have her.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, something that the longer I've been making art and you know, certainly something that I've grappled with on a personal level recently is how it is becoming more comfortable with this idea of art being a practice of everyday life and what that actually means. And I think the way people are traditionally kind of introduced to art and educated around art is it's this thing that you do, or it's this practice that you have, or the stuff that you make more often than not. And I got really interested in this idea of kind of flipping that, of like, art is kind of something that can happen out of like living and existing, and you can essentially co-opt anything it is that one can like do in life and make that art, right? So this idea of like art being anything you can get away with. And I started teaching, or I taught for a couple years this class to teens to kind of engender them to this idea, right? Because it's not something I think young people get traditionally exposed to, but it's something that I've come to terms with recently this year working on the citizenship project for Lil. You know, I'm essentially taking the techniques that I use in order to like earn a living, right? So like understanding how to do like statistical analysis of like a data set and using like an Excel spreadsheet and like putting together a PowerPoint presentation, like this kind of stuff that, you know, if someone told me when I was a teenager that like, you know, one of the more prominent pieces of work you're going to make is like an Excel spreadsheet, I would have been like really kind of horrified at that idea. But, you know, something that's kind of occurred to me though, is that's really, like making art with a spreadsheet's not limiting, it's really liberating. Like once you start to realize that there is no limit in how you can kind of create something and make a statement about something, and how your own life can be artful of itself. I don't know, that's something kind of cool that I've been like pondering. I don't know what the connection is to the pandemic, other than I think like everybody else, you've had way too much time to like be alone and isolated in your house, like thinking like way too much about like your life and what it all means. So there's that tie-in, I guess.
But I do like the idea of there being like empirical statistical analysis of something that you enjoy doing, you know?
Yeah, it was interesting. I kind of stumbled across something one night, just kind of like Googling like this idea of research art, which is something I don't really know a lot about, but the act of like doing research can be the art. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And I should.
That's like super culture jammy. I love that.
Yeah. So kind of being like really inspired to play with that more and kind of like really like bring all these parts of yourself together, right? I think like a lot of artists maybe struggle with this, right? Of like very few of us make a living from our art. And so you have these kind of bifurcated parts of who you are. It's like what you do for work, and then like it's your art practice, and maybe do it on nights and weekends. And, you know, even the way people like know you, it's like your family sees you in one way, and your friends from work see you in one way, and your artist friends see you one way. And I like this idea of like reconciling those things together and not having them be parts of you. Like it is you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's so many definitions of what success means. You know, I know in one of your zines, one of you wrote something like, you know, is maybe success for in the zine world that I can break even? You know,
That's
I heard someone else said, you know, success to me just means that I don't feel guilty when I'm like watching TV that I'm not working on a project. Like,
yeah, totally. Yeah.
yeah.
The one I've arrived at with my students, so like I teach a professional practices class to, you know, BFA students, and it's like success as an artist means you made enough money to actually have to declare it on your taxes, which is about $5,000 in a year. That's like the, you know, that's probably 1/1000th of 1% of people who call themselves artists.
Right.
You know, so the people who actually make it's almost like there's a gulf between that and like Damien Hirst, and there's like nothing in between, you know.
Yeah. And then there's all the, you know, like that sort of punk rock zine angle of like, it's just about creating community, or it's just about taking down the man, and, you know, what, you know, there's that whole angle too. There's just so it's
the kind of satirical, not satirical angle on Lil Issue 3 is that you can have both of these things, because the title of the whole seminar Heather came up with is Woke Not Broke. Like that you know, you can be successful and engender community at the same time.
Right. Yeah. It's like you don't have to sell out of all your zines. I think one of the
nice. That belongs on like a bumper sticker or something.
Yeah, right. Or just like embroidered on a pillow or something.
Yes. Yeah, totally.
Hey, but we've probably gone way over like 15 minutes. Should we like?
Oh shit! Sorry. I derailed you guys because
you're good.
Can I tell you why I over prepared?
Oh, that's amazing.
Oh wow, that's great.
My last question I'm going to ask you is, I loved the Miss Merch zines, which is taking pictures of like, you know, misplaced things in the grocery store and then writing a haiku about it. And I thought maybe you could tell me if I did this like in an effective way, in the spirit of, I'm going to do a screen share of the picture that I took. And then I'll read you the haiku. So, all right, here, wait, screen share. Am I doing this right? Let's see.
Yes.
You got it.
All right, here it is. Okay.
Oh,
all right, do you see this picture?
That's a really good one.
That's a good one.
Yeah, okay, good. All right, here's the haiku that I wrote. So maybe you can give me some guidance, you know? All right, here it is. Essence of the thing, allegory of the cave, chicken of the sea.
That's amazing.
That's really great.
Thank you. You guys inspired that. So thank you for your inspiration. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Okay, so before we like flip flop, tell everybody your website who's watching.
Yeah, so we have two. So isPRESS is isPRESS, isPRESS.co, so not com, co, which is company, but also Colorado for us. And then sociometry.com is more like the archive of the Institute of Sociometry. Less active, but that's where you can go to. isPRESS.co is where you can go to like look at our zines and buy a zine, and sociometry.com is where you can go to read a lot of the content that's not necessarily in the zines, but is like previous works. Yeah.
Cool.
And Instagram is like at is.press. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Okay, so turning the tables. First of all, I was noticing and admiring your Chicago Diner t-shirt.
Yeah.
So, thank you. Yeah, I thought I would wear it as like a shout out, you know.
Yeah, one of Heather's favorite spots.
You know, amazingly, Pete lived in Chicago for 23 months, has been a vegetarian now for
like 23 years.
23 years.
Yeah.
And
probably longer.
I had to take him there on a visit back to Chicago.
Yeah, I didn't know it existed.
I know. I was like,
and
how?
Check this out. I got a really good friend who lived in Chicago for like 3 years. He went to DePaul, and he lived in Boys Town, and he's a vegan, and he had no idea it existed.
I know. I was horrified by this.
So, plug for the Chicago Diner for the viewing audience.
Meat
If-
free
Awesome.
83, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, so in reviewing our questions, I think in looking at your zines and watching the new arrivals and like not really knowing you, but you know, a tiny bit, seeing you around, I'm realizing that we came up with like much less like hard-hitting journalist approach to our questions, and more of a feed off of you know, what I've gleaned of your personality, which is at least in presenting like the stuff on the Quimby's new arrivals of being kind of zany and like funny. And
Well, thank you.
and so we kind of wrote these zany, funny questions to kind of prompt that. So
No, that's great. I feel like that's like a perfect, like, you know, flip it, you know, that I think that's
yeah. And you kind of answered our first question, which is tell us who you are, you know, what your zine practice is and how long you've been making zines. But I guess you know, you told us who you are, but if you could just kind of dive into that a little further and
Sure.
tell me how long you've been into this. And you said you publish Caboose, but there's a few more too that, you know,
Truth.
you do.
Yeah. So I started reading zines when I was in high school. My parents were older than everybody, so I was ground all the time. So I remember reading Maximum Rock and Roll and realizing I could send cash through the mail and get zines from other people, or music or stickers or whatever. And that's kind of what introduced me to zine culture. And then in college, like, you know, reading zines like Bunny Hop and Chick Factor and that kind of thing. And then one of my friends post-college was like, do you want to make a zine with me? And I was like, yes, I do. And so we started doing Cul-de-sac and recently started that. That's a joint zine that my friend Julie and I do together. And we started that one back up after like 20 years recently. And then also I'm kind of like I'm like a poser sociologist, like an armchair sociologist. And I like to do a lot of like oral histories of things. So like when Quimby's turned 25, I did kind of an oral history zine where I collaborated with a former employee and the founder of Quimby, Stephen Simbursky, and then I had people contribute to it. And we did kind of like a memories of the store and words and pictures. And I've done kind of oral histories of other organizations that I've been part of or projects that I've been involved in. And then sometimes I'll do zines that are like, I did a photo zine. My dad's a retired veterinarian, so I did a zine.
Oh yeah.
Grab that
Things
one
that my dad has had to remove from animals, like, you know,
Yeah.
kidney stones and game pieces. And yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty nice this morning. Take a look at that.
Good thing to read while eating breakfast, of course, you know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and so that, and then I started working at Quimby's about almost 20 years ago, and I harassed the store until they hired me. But like I'd already kind of had a relationship with the store. Oh, for anybody that's watching, if you're not familiar with Quimby's, it's a store that is a bookstore but known for selling zines. And we sell a lot of isPRESS stuff too, which is how we all kind of know each other. And so because I'd already been selling my zines there, I harassed the store until they hired me, and that's been my day job ever since. So that's kind of my general history of zines.
Okay, and if you could kind of keep rolling with that a little bit and bring us up to present. So you mentioned you had a project you're working on.
Oh, yes. So I'm so excited. I feel like you guys would be into this, and I'm super into what you guys are doing. So I did this. I circulated a zine survey. I don't know, it might be backwards the way it's mirroring or not mirroring. I don't know. But it says zine survey, I want your opinions. And basically it was a Google survey where I asked people about their preferences and things regarding zines that they like to read, both in terms of topics and construction, and then also things that they didn't want to experience in reading zines. And I modeled it after Colmar and Melmood, who did the most wanted art and the most wanted song and the most unwanted song based on the data that they were given. And I thought that it would be hilarious to create a most wanted zine and a most unwanted zine. And I started tabulating the data and doing it in a spreadsheet. So Heather, this is why I was like, oh my God, you're speaking my language, because like, you know, and I started tabulating the data, and I thought maybe I would share with you guys what the number one, of course I totally misplaced I don't know where it is, but I thought I would share with you guys like the number one topic that people want to read in zines.
Please.
Can you take a guess what it is? And I'll tell you, but first I will rule things out. It is not cats. It is not pizza. It is not intersectional feminism, even though I often joke that it should be, because that's what it seems like people buy at the store. But
and it's not cats and intersectional feminism together, right?
Well, I suppose I could find a way to skew the data.
Yeah, because that was my first instinct.
Right.
I am gonna just go on a limb here. I think it might be food.
You would think. No, it's interpersonal stories.
Oh.
The classic.
Yeah, and I, by way of the way things were unraveling in this the way things were coming out in the survey as I was reading people's opinions, I had to kind of separate out personal stories writing, so basically zines, with personal stories comics, like diary comics, journal comics, that those had to be two different categories.
Wow.
And it's the
long
writing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. That's interesting, because I always assume, or oftentimes at Zine Fests, when people realize, or art book fairs, when people realize a lot of stuff on my table is like a lot of writing, that's when they're just like, you know.
Right.
Yeah, they're like, oh, I'll come back. I'm just gonna keep looking around. You're like, see you. You're not coming back.
Yeah. I feel you, because as someone who writes zines, I experience that all the time.
Yeah, but that's kind of interesting, because I think, like, based off my like spotty like history of zines knowledge, I mean, those have been like the zines that have been around the longest, like since people started making zines. They were like zines. So
yeah, and fanzines that were kind of zines, because they were like, I'm obsessed with this project. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Oh, and the other thing that I used for the data was, so during the pandemic, I started offering this like quarantine, I called it the Quimby's customized quarantine package, all starting with Q. And I basically said, in the notes section of your order, tell me the types of things you like to read. And I realized that actually in some ways might have been a better marker of telling me what people want in zines, because it's what they were willing to spend money on. And specifically it was $25. So then I got that part of it, which was interesting, because there's what people say, and then there's what people are willing to spend money on. But just because they're willing to spend money on it doesn't mean that it's not true. But the problem was I started posting pictures of people's order notes because they were hilarious. And then the order notes started to get weirder and weirder, because people thought they were going to get shown on social media. There's so many variables.
I feel like we combined our data sets, like that would be really, wow.
Fuck yeah. Oh, oops. This was supposed to be family friendly. Sorry, I got so excited by that. Sorry. Yeah, we definitely need to combine our data on this.
Oh, yeah.
Follow-up question is, what was the least desired topic?
Okay, do you want me to do a screen share of my results?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Yes. Okay. Let me, Zine survey responses. Okay. The things that are in red. So before I do the screen share, the things that are in red are like construction related, and the things that are in just regular black and white, or was it gray? And gray are like content related. So let's see, screen share. Was it this? Is it this? Oh, here we go. Okay, can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can see up here at the top, personal stories writing 120. And then you can kind of see, and I put it, so it's in, I guess this would be descending order. Yeah.
Punk stuff.
And what you're going to notice is that in theory, there's certain categories that I could combine, which would move them to a different spot on the list.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I had to be sort of creative in the way, you know, oh, I spelled culture wrong here. So yeah, it's kind of surprising. So what was your question? Where something fell on the list?
Just the least popular topic.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. So the least
Scroll to the
wanted things.
Trivia.
Zine is, so zine, okay, so these are things that got votes of 1. Zine is short in length, used a typewriter, not a typewriter font. That's like that someone, the idea is that only one person actually, like there's certain things that were so idiosyncratic but hilarious that I had to include them. One person wanted trivia.
That's great. Well,
So these are all things that, you know.
rural life.
Yeah. Okay, here's the other, here's the other thing. So these are just things that people like. What I have not tabulated the data of are the questions of least wanted stuff yet. I've only tabulated the things that people want. So I guess these are like the things that would be like an A-, that thing people like only, you know, of all the people I surveyed, one person said that they wanted the zine to be short in length. Not that zines that are short in length are bad, but just that it is an attribute of a good zine. So
that one.
Hobos and Hucksters got 1 vote.
Nice. Yeah, there's some you know, gosh, I'm blanking on the word, but just some
key insights.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So I feel like we definitely need to do some data combination here.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just, my mind's like spinning right now. I'm like, really, I'm pretty excited.
Oh, awesome. I feel like this is like a good, like in that issue of Raw Fury, Johnny Sampson was talking about like, what did he call it? Like peers, not fans, peers, not fans, or, you know, going from, yeah. Nice, yeah.
For those in the audience, but purchased at Quimby's.
Oh, yes. By a Chicago artist.
Yeah, he called it a fan to peer. So when you're a fan of someone, you know, over time you become their peer. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, speaking of Quimby's, your next question is, Quimby's is on fire.
What do you take? Oh my God, I think about this all the time. Okay, here's the problem. Do I take things related to how much we've made money that day, like the credit card machine and the drawer, or do I take all 26 of the consignment binders that are just the active consignments that we have upstairs? Okay, or do I take merchandise?
Yes. Let's do a hypothetical and say you were able to get the credit card machine and all the binders out, and you have one more trip in, and you're having a, you know, a come to Yahweh moment, and you're like, I'm going to take what I most value. Like not what sells the best per se, but just like the most valuable. Yeah, the most valuable to you.
Yes. Right.
What do you grab?
Oh man, I gotta let this one marinate.
All right.
Geez, I didn't realize I was gonna get another trip. That's the thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Wow. Damn. It's hard for me to, oh my God. Because I feel like no matter what I say, I'm going to be falling asleep tonight and being like, why didn't I say blah, blah, blah? Going to totally change my mind. Would it be some of the some of the signage?
Oh.
Because it's based on Chris Ware's art.
Oh, okay.
Smart.
Yeah. Because that's not like replaceable in the same way zine. People can make more zines, right?
Right. If you have a master copy, you can always make another zine.
Yeah. Right.
All right.
Yeah, I guess because the signs have such legacy for the store, so it would maybe be one of the hand-painted signs, I think. Wow, that's a good question. Thank you for putting me on the spot to think of that, because now I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now you have your plan.
Yeah.
Just in case.
Yeah.
So our next question is inspired by one of your titles, series Awesome Things.
Oh.
So in the theme of awesome things, what are some awesome things about the pandemic, i.e. our current state of suck?
Oh yeah, no, totally. Okay, so number one, I'm glad they brought this back, and that is an almost daily Pritzker, he's our governor, Illinois governor, his press conferences every day.
Mm-hmm.
There was a period of time where one of my coworkers and I would like MST 3K the press conferences, and it was kind of also like a jokey drinking game, like not like we were drinking at work anything other than coffee or water, but like the idea was, every time JB, like we're on like a jokey first name initial basis with him, says something like, like, well, I'm a businessman and I understand that small businesses, blah, blah. Like anytime he says something like that, you take a drink, or like if we have the video up and they have one of the more like expressive people doing sign language.
Oh yeah, that's
always fascinating. Or like they have like a, someone on that we can, make jokes about. Like it is so like healing, I guess, to have somebody there with you to listen to bad news about.
Yeah.
with.
Love it.
Yeah, so that's definitely something. What else? The fact that friends that I had kind of drifted apart from, we reestablished contact because of all the video apps that like I probably never would have learned to use or been even remotely interested in. I mean, granted, the amount of screen time is, a little, it's making my senses feel a little waterlogged, but the fact that I've reestablished contact in a time where we're not supposed to have physical contact is very healing, and I really enjoy that,
Mm-hmm.
So what about you guys?
Ooh.
Not commuting, I don't know.
Yeah, that one for sure. Not having to commute in the snow. Awesome things. I just like fully just leaned into like gardening. Like if I was like sliding into the home base of middle age, like clogs, gardening for stress relief, I just slid right in during
Yeah.
I don't know. I might have like kind of waffled on third base for a little while there, thinking like, am I ready for this? And I'm like, no, I'm ready.
Well, we were actually
Yeah.
joking last night about how the difference between, because we were in Boulder briefly, which is a city that's adjacent to Denver. It's about 30 miles away, but it's like a college town. And there's all these college students in their Halloween gear. And we had gone up there to just like walk around and hang out with our friend. And we were laughing about how the difference between like those people and us with the pandemic is they're like, I'm not going to let a global pandemic keep me from partying tonight. It's Halloween. And for us, it's like, I'm so glad we have this global pandemic so we don't get pressured into staying up past our bedtime by going to our friend's house with 5 people and putting together a costume.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it suits our lifestyle in some sense.
Yeah, seriously, like I was already kind of a person who didn't really go out that much anyway. And as like an artist or writer person, like honestly, this has not changed my lifestyle drastically. But also for me, have a job that I still go to. I still leave the house. It's just the hours are slightly different.
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay, so speaking of your job, it's related, but not entirely. So has your zine celebrity ever gotten you recognized on the street or comped a coffee or meal or out of jury duty? And if not, why not?
Jury
duty. Well, first of all, can I just say I'm flattered that you would consider me a zine celebrity. Thank you. Has it ever comped me anything? No, but it has led to situations with other zinesters who are like, I would be interested in reading your new thing. I'd be happy to trade you something, Like, so just being told I'm interested in reading your thing.
Yeah.
Like the ability to barter, I feel like, is what zines have.
It's like
one of the things.
it's like you're an A&R person. They're passing you their demo tapes, right?
Well, that's hilarious. Only because if you mean like people are giving me their zine demos because they're like, I want to sell it at Quimby's. What's hilarious about that is anybody can consign any zine if they just download the consignment form. So like if somebody comes in the store and they're like doing this weird hard sell about their thing that they've written and published, I'm like, I mean, you can tell me about your thing. I'm happy to hear about it, but you don't need to do the hard sell. We're going to take it as long as it, you know, logistically is bound and isn't over a certain price, you know, like.
Well, I guess, yeah, I guess it didn't get you out of jury duty, but,
Truth.
but you tried, right? A little bit, or you thought about it. So tell us a little more about that experience, right? Because this is like Caboose number 12 here. Is it number
Yes,
12?
the
Yeah.
most recent issue of Caboose.
You had this kind of moment of crisis where you're like, I mean, you know, I can't do this. I don't got time for this, right?
Yeah. I definitely, like in the beginning, it's like everybody else with jury duty, it was like, I got to find a way to get out of this. Like, I gotta, this can't, I have things going on. I can't, you know, and then at some point it was like, actually, okay, let's back up a minute here. They need critical thinking people to sustain our democracy.
Mm-hmm.
There is like a legal precedent set for like, you can't be fired from a job for having to do jury duty. It was just that my main problem was we got to make sure that the store is covered.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, you know, and that was what was worrisome for me. But, you know, to the owner of the store, his name's Eric Kersimer, to his credit, he was like, yeah, go do that. I'll cover for you. And my coworkers were like, yeah, it's fine. We'll, you know, we'll keep the store covered. And because I am who I am, I was like, this is a weird situation that I'm in, that I kind of feel like maybe I need to document this. I have this weird compulsive need to like document weird situations that I'm in, I guess. It's like, I think of myself more of a writer than an artist. So if anytime I'm in a weird situation, I'm like, this is definitely something that I could, you know, make something out of.
Yeah. Wondering when you had that realization of like, oh, okay, you know, jury duty, I'm going to do this out of a civic sense, but like, also this is perfect for what I do. This is like my thing.
Yes. Yeah. And sometimes I don't even sometimes I don't even realize that I'm doing that like in the back of my mind, I am actually kind of documenting things in a way that I didn't really sort of realize that I was doing. And the other thing is, you know, if you talk to enough people about something, you start to get like a story going, you know, like after jury duty, I would stop in at the store to make sure the place, you know, like monkeys weren't in there throwing feces and ripping up paper and the place hadn't burnt down, you know. You know, and just also because I live half a mile away from Quimby. So it's like, I get off the train, I go to the jury duty downtown, take the blue line out to Damon Stop, get off, walk over to Quimby's, and then, you know, half a mile later I'm at home. So I stop in at the store, and each day I have like, you know, my little shtick about like, well, here's what happened today. And what the thing about how the way that I write is, and one of my methods is I just talk about something enough that, you know, the movement of the information from here to here to here is the way it sort of formulates itself into an articulated format. And I mean, like, which is why my writing style, I try to make it sound like the way that I talk, but just a little bit more smarter. A little bit more smarter.
Spell
more
check.
articulate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Spell check. Yeah. And grammar checked.
That's like perfect segue into our last question. Maybe you ask, and you kind of started to answer it already. So.
Yeah. Well, so the question is, how did you find your voice as a writer? And then just, so how much has it evolved since you started making zines? And where do you see yourself going in the future?
Oh, that's a good question. There's a part of me in some alternate universe or like another dimension that like went the route of becoming a stand-up comedian. Like the part of me that was raised on like watching cable in the 80s, and then there's like the other part of me that did actually, so part of my collegiate experience, I majored in English, but I also went back to school to get a teaching certificate for high school English for secondary education. And then by the time I finished student teaching, I was like, oh, not into this. So there is like an alternate universe where I became a high school teacher. And so I feel like those two things sort of formulated, I feel like, who I am as a writer, combined with my inability to do anything lightly, like getting the questions ready to interview you guys. I was like, okay, I have to write all these sort of paragraphs to articulate what these questions are. And I need to, it's like a type A, it's like a weird type A thing that I can't control. Like the minute I get involved in a project, it's like, I am in, I don't do things halfway, like, so I feel like all of those things combined are what sort of makes my voice the way it is in the way that I write. And I feel like the way I used to write when I was younger was like, look at these things I'm into. And then as I got a little bit older, I was like, I need the so what in my writing. Like, it's got like, I need to have this point, with the exception of the things that I do in Awesome Things, because that is basically a list zine. And that's the scrappy cut and paste thing that I try to release my type, become, instead of maybe a type B person or a type B plus person, so I would like if I could find a way to do this in my future writing, to be a little less stodgy in my attempts to articulate things so specifically. Like I would like my writing to have a little bit more of a poetic flow to it. But I'm still working on that. That's harder for me.
Yeah. I mean, I liked how, with jury duty here, I really enjoyed just kind of how it starts off like really accessibly, and it's like kind of reading this personal story, but then it kind of like it drew me into like thinking more deeply about why we would do something like this. So it kind of like, it's a slow reveal of like, here's my personal thing that everyone can relate to, and then it becomes a kind of an essay about broader things, So it's like what I'm left thinking about, because I've been called for jury duty a couple times, and I've done this kind of cynical things to get out of it.
Yeah.
And then, getting your perspective from this is kind of realizing that was like a jerk move on my part, and that like, it's really, it is kind of like an important underpinning of society. So, that's wasn't what I was expecting when I first started reading it. I thought,
wow, that's really flattering to hear that, because I feel like that's something that the stuff that you both publish does. It's that pivot. And I'm really glad that you got that out of that. You feel like good about that project.
So I guess, because we're at like an hour now.
But we have one last question, and it's a good one.
Okay.
So for all those Chicagoans, Chicagoites out there, so you get to pick the season, but describe your perfect Chicago day. So you
Sweater
don't have to go to
weather.
work.
Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Don't have to go to work, of course.
Right. It's like you wake up whenever you want and go to bed whenever you want, and you can just do whatever you want for the day. In Chicago, what would you do?
Non-pandemically speaking.
Yes.
Sure, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, the weather, I can tell you what the weather is. It's light sweater weather, but that you maybe don't need a sweater. So it's like what I imagine the Bay Area of California is like, even though I've only been there like a few times and it was chilly when I was there. So it's, you know, whatever. But, and then let's see, it would be, it would be pancakes for breakfast from Orange, where they have a pancake flight. And orange infused coffee, because I have the palate of a 7-year-old, and it's like, oh, is it weird novelty? Is it sweet? All right, sounds great. And then thrift store shopping, definitely. And then zine club, going to zine club. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, I mean, it did get moved to Quimby's a few years ago, but it used to be at the Chicago Publishing Resource Center before it closed. But and then hanging out with people who make zines and talking about zines, and or maybe even working on zines, I guess. That would kind of be my ideal day.
It's a good day.
Awesome. Yeah. Maybe plug for Zine Club. I've been the one time, but now
Oh yeah, the one time you came, I showed your zine.
Yeah, one positive about the pandemic is anybody can attend Chicago Zine Club.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, it's usually on a Tuesday or a Thursday, and we do it on Zoom.
Yeah, I think the path to success is you just Google it and you figure it out. I think you probably have to get in contact with someone at Zine Club to get the Zoom link.
So the info about it is always at quimbys.com and their events calendar. But we do ask people to RSVP since it is a Zoom thing and we don't want to get Zoom bombed. And so people just email zineclubchicago@gmail.com.
Nice.
And the one time I did it, I have since had 2 mail exchanges with 2 other people that were in Zine Club. Trades.
Oh, no kidding.
One of which is in Melbourne, so all the way from Australia, who is also
she works for Sticky.
Yeah, zooming to Zine Club. Yeah, and the other one was a guy in Chicago, and he's a relief printer. His name's David. I don't know if he's been since, but he was talking about how he was a professor, and I just chatted him. I was like, "Oh, I'm a professor too. Let's trade zines." And then he's like, "I'm a relief printer mostly," and I was like, "My sister's a relief printer. She makes really cool work. Here's her Instagram." And he was like, "No way, you're Jill Bergman's brother." So we had this great like synchronicity from that too. So there's something about Zine Club where it's like, it's basically like a synchronicity vortex. So all you people out there in Zine land, you got to attend a Zine Club and these magic things will happen to you.
Yes.
Wow, that is so great. Wow. Okay, so before we wrap this up, what's the next project you guys have? Is it a little number 3?
Well, that's probably the next zine publishing. I'm working on finishing a project I started 24 years ago.
Here you have it.
It's a
in
book
the pile.
that's related to the man-made zine.
Oh yeah.
Like a primer for it. And it's going to result in 2 books, one of which is done and out. Not for sale yet. It's a photo animated flip book that's like several hundred pages. The other is like a memoir that's about 250 pages. This is one copy, so I made like a mock-up. This is still being edited. But it's about walking 2,700 miles, but in 2 stints that are 23 years apart, and documenting the journey. This is from Mexico to Canada on the Pacific Crest Trail, and taking this is like taking a picture about every 20 miles, one a day. And then there's a 23-year gap between 2 of these pictures towards the end. So that is like publishing project. So the art's already done, but we have a good idea for an art project, which maybe you want to give the mom synopsis. I mean, could we do that quickly?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I was just going to say, I'm working on Miss Merch Volume 3. So we have the Everyday Value Edition and the, what did I call this one? The Get Ready Company's Coming Edition. All photos taken the day before Thanksgiving 2019. So Volume 3 is the Panic Edition, documenting a grocery store trip that happened in March of this year that was a little dicey. And yeah, working on Lil 3. So we need to publish these research findings and share them with the zine world. But Mom is one of those projects that's been curing for a long time. And it encourages men to observe modesty. So oftentimes, you know, women are asked to consider men's urges, but have we ever really considered how difficult it maybe is for men to suppress, or for women to suppress their urges?
So yeah,
you know, like
the sight of a bearish, hairy, sweaty man in the park with his shirt off.
I mean, women have a really hard time controlling themselves, not just, you know, younger conventionally attractive women, but women like your own mom, right?
Yeah.
And
Right.
men really should consider how covering up can help them help their moms with their uncontrollable sexual urges.
And it's not just putting a shirt on. You have to alluring a man's forearms can be, or their neck, or Adam's apple.
Yeah.
So we're going to encourage a full coverage wrist and hood garment. And we're really going to start, what we're looking to do is start a movement of men observing modesty. And then the acronym, of course, is mom, because you really need to think about your mom.
Right.
And your mom.
Right.
And so originally we were gonna launch Mom of this summer and share, you know, have like t-shirt promo girls just sort of approach shirtless men in the park, you know, to just encourage them to consider modesty, give them a free t-shirt.
So this is like
But
coats for
we had to kind of
teens.
rethink. So
but-
now we're, yeah,
It's similar. Yeah.
but now we're kind of rethinking and workshopping it, and you know, men also maybe need to consider covering their face as well. So not
I
only
mean, everybody does right now.
full
Right.
face covering. So we're workshopping the mom costume, and we're hoping summer 2021's the
Like an apparel line of black full coverage hooded long sleeve shirt with a corresponding face covering.
yeah.
Wow. I love it.
And that's, you know, type of thing where you just like get it together, go to the park, try to hand these out, take some pictures,
See what happens.
and then repeat it about 35 times.
Yeah.
And see what happens. Then how about you? What's next? What's your next thing?
Well, my next thing is tabulating the results of the least wanted zines and then because that's going to be much easier to make the least wanted zine than it will be to make the most wanted zine.
Right.
I have a hunch that the most unwanted zine is going to be huge, unstapled, totally illegible, and probably nobody's going to want it.
It's going to be done on a typewriter, and it's going to be about thrift store shopping. What's funny about that is so Coats for Teens, you know, I used to sell everything for $5, and then I realized, you know, that does barely cover in the toner. So I'm going to write prices to everything on $7, but it's always good to have a cheap thing. And nobody ever wants Coats for Teens, so I kept it at $5. So it's the cheapest thing, and it still like never sells. But my pitch is always starts with, it's about buying hipster coats at the thrift store and giving them to, you know, irresponsible teens who left the house without their coat on. And I think that mention of thrift store in the beginning of that pitch is what's tanking it, right?
Yeah.
Because store shopping is at the bottom of your list.
Well, here's the thing. It's at the bottom of the list of the things people like. It's not the least wanted.
That's true, but yeah, okay, that's true. It's not totally.
You know what?
abstract.
You know what
No.
might be worth saying about that zine is, this would turn some people off, I think, but maybe the right people would be turned on by it, and that is, it's an analysis of what happens when you give out free things.
Ooh, there you go.
Because the word for me, what pulled the thing that would pull me in is, oh, it's an analysis. Because, like I said, I'm the poser sociologist.
Right.
So, which I need to make that a Twitter handle or something. But you know, for me, it'd be like an analysis. Huh? Is this about consumerism? Like that? Like I would just be like, all right, I'm in. You know.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right, good tip. Hot tip.
All right. So we were happy to have gone over by a full, like probably 35 minutes for.
Well, we
all
did spend the first half hour playing rock, paper, scissors.
That's
So-
true. So really, we're on time. We're
Right.
early.
So I think for closeout, we should all make a rock first of all, and then we'll do the virtual fist bump.
Oh,
Coming at ya.
oh.
Bam.
Awesome.
All right.
This was so great to talk to you guys.
Yeah,
me
you
too.
too.
Excellent.
And we'll see you in the future in some non-pandemic
In real life.
when we can get back to Chicago.
I look forward to it. Or when I'm out in Denver.
Yes.
Yeah, anytime you are. Look.
Excellent. Same. All right. I'll talk to you guys soon.